Hey everybody, it's Rachel. Thanks for coming back, and if you're new, I hope that you're interested in what I have to say. And of course, thanks to those who have subscribed and left comments. I do appreciate that. And so today we are going to be talking about Phillip Scofield because this scandal just keeps on growing. And of course it would. This is a major, major issue in the United Kingdom right now. So I'm going to talk about it. So Phillip Scofield gave an interview last night to the BBC about the scandal. And my first reaction was, why? Why are you doing this? I couldn't understand why on earth he would give an interview. A lot of times when there's scandals like this, people, if they do give an interview, they wait a minute. They don't do it right on the heels, right when the bubble is growing and growing and growing about what is actually happening. So I found that really weird that he would give an interview. But also, too, it might make sense because, TV is where he's comfortable. That's where he's been for 40 years. So I think for him, it probably felt natural to go on TV and give this kind of an interview. He definitely, and you can find it on YouTube, it's readily available. It's a weird interview. I mean, it's clearly very scripted. He is very careful with how he words things, which is completely understandable that he would do that. I'm sure that he had been guided by lawyers as to what to say, crisis management teams, PR teams, as to how to handle himself. And I'm sure that the interviewer also was given a list of questions, how to handle things. So this was not kind of a gotcha style interview. He looked very out of sorts, which is, again, completely understandable. He said that the relationship did not start until this young man was 20 years old. So hopefully that is true. At least that way it eliminates any questions of whether or not inappropriate behavior was going on while this young man was a minor. So that's good. But the one thing that I found really caught me off guard and also showed me how scripted this was and this point he was trying to make is that when he mentioned that he met the young man at 15 at a drama school, that he followed him on Twitter. And Phillip Scofield said twice, maybe 3 times in the interview that he follows 11,400 people. Who cares how many people you follow on Twitter? And who knows how many people you follow on Twitter? It just seems like such a bizarre point to make and just a really odd fixation on the number. And I get that the point that he's trying to make is look, I didn't just exclusively follow him on Twitter. It's not like I only follow 7 people the KFC Instagram account is very famous for only following 7 people because of the 7 herbs and spices. So, I think he wanted to show that he wasn't choosy with his followers, that he kind of followed everybody so that this young man wasn't purely singled out as a target of some kind. And he also flatly denies grooming. That was a word used multiple times in the interview, saying that nothing happened in that regard. And he also is saying that ITV never paid for the cars for the young man, that he doesn't have an account with them, that he paid for those taxis, those private cars to and from his house. And he did indicate that the relationship actually started in his dressing room. And that he claims that nobody knew. Obviously, some people knew because they wouldn't have complained to the ITV bosses in 2019 if nobody knew that something was going on. So I don't believe that part of the interview. I think probably at the beginning, nobody did know because, if you're careful you can hide relationships for a while, and then eventually something comes to light or somebody catches on to a little something, whether people start noticing an over-familiarity, maybe a little bit more touching, maybe those long gazing looks, that lovers give each other. You can't hide it for long. So I don't believe that nobody knew. And he claims that Holly Willoughby, his co-host, had no idea. And he is very emphatic about that. And a lot of the interview seemed to be protecting her, that he doesn't want her to lose her job over him. He doesn't flat out come out and say it, but it is heavily, heavily implied throughout the interview. So I think in some respects, this is a plea to the public to blame her so she doesn't lose her job or lose favor. But I also think that the damage is done. As I've said before, you can't unring the bell. And that's what's happened here. People are making up their minds about him and Holly, again, because they were such good friends. It would be different if they were purely colleagues, that they didn't go on holiday together, that they, didn't go everywhere together. It would be totally different. But this is beyond, just a colleague relationship. And I think that's why so many people find it very hard to believe that she did not know anything. And of course, more and more information is coming out about the toxic set of This Morning, and squarely blaming her as well for the culture on the set, that she apparently wouldn't talk to people, that if you weren't, somebody who was top tier, you didn't matter. And that is not a way to conduct yourself on a set or any place of business. Even the little people, make the ship float, and you can't ignore them, because they are critical to everything. You might be the face of the show, you might be the star, but the people that are behind you are just as important. They make sure that you look good. And so you can't treat them like garbage, which apparently both of them are guilty of. And she is due to come back, I think next week, Monday. She had taken some vacation time because it just happened to coincide, I guess, with her children's school holiday. So she took off that time to be with her children. So we'll see if she'll be invited back. I don't know. And if she does come back, I would be very curious about how they're going to handle it. Are they going to ignore the whole drama, pretend that nothing ever happened, or are they actually going to have a discussion and have her talk about the situation, obviously in a smaller way, but something to the public that is watching her? So I would be curious what the tone of her return will be, if she even returns at all. And I have a feeling that probably the ITV bosses right now are probably really evaluating whether or not that is a good business decision to bring her back. And as for Phillip Scofield, he is on this press tour. He gave an interview to The Sun. I think that ran in the papers about 2 days ago. And of course, this new interview with the BBC of trying to get back into the good graces of the public, and also trying to make himself not look like a predator. And this also is a big concern for him, and I can understand why he feels this way, is that his brother, who was a former police officer, about 3 weeks ago, was sentenced for inappropriate activity with a minor boy. And his brother was a police officer, and I believe that there were 2 victims in that particular case. And again, I'm using coded language, but it's SA that he was convicted for. So you don't want to, so I'm sure Phillip doesn't want to come off as being the same as his brother, because that was also very public in the UK, that a celebrity's brother was being convicted of such a crime. And then right on the heels of that, you've got allegations involving a young man that met when they were 15. So I think that might be part of it as well, that he doesn't want people to think that he is the same as his brother, which I do understand. But I don't understand why he just keeps talking and talking and talking. It just, at some point, you're not doing yourself any favors. And it just gives more fuel to the fire for other news networks to talk about you on, to criticize you on. In my opinion, I think it would have been smarter for him to go away for a little while and then give his interview, so that, people would have digested it. Maybe some things had come out, had resolved, and then he could, have his 2 cents, the mea culpa tour. But he's not. He's, statement after statement, getting his name out. So he is a continual talking topic because he won't shut up. And I don't understand why. So we'll see if he gives any more statements or not. I don't know if he'll give any more interviews. I would also be curious of that. He did state that he believes that his career is over. And I think that's probably true, but it doesn't mean that he's not going to try to rehabilitate himself. There are lots of other means these days to be on television, whether he goes to an alternative network, whether he maybe starts up his own YouTube channel, where he starts, interviewing people that might be willing to talk with him. So there are other avenues for him, and that might be part of the mea culpa tour, but he also might be wanting to get out in front of allegations or things that he knows are going to come to light. So that way his statement is already out there, and that it can kind of be flushed out with the other stuff that's coming out. And of course, the head of ITV is going to be in front of Parliament next week, and is going to be grilled about this situation, along with other legislation that's going on in Britain right now as it relates to the media. So we'll see what happens, what more comes out, and what comes out when there is an investigation, because apparently ITV is going to be launching an investigation into what happened, which is the right thing to do. So things like this don't happen again, because the last thing anybody wants, again, is a Jimmy Savile situation. And it seems to me as though this was not a Jimmy Savile situation, that this is more of somebody that got really powerful and kind of felt he could do what he wanted, and he was untouchable because he knew he was the face of the network. He knew that he was extremely popular and that people would turn a blind eye because he was worth too much money for the network, and that finally things blew up. I mean, this is very similar to the Matt Lauer situation, except Matt Lauer had kind of been a known predator with multiple women on the Today Show, not just one isolated incident. But they are kind of akin to each other because, again, Matt Lauer was a huge star. I mean, he was the face of NBC News. Not only did he host the Today Show, but he did all the big high-profile interviews. He was the guy that was going to do them. So, Phillip Scofield was in that same kind of vein as being, the top dog of ITV. And when you get that powerful, you lose sight of what is and isn't appropriate. So, and what do they say? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is totally true. Phillip Scofield wasn't, all-knowing, all-powerful by any stretch, but when you get a big enough head and when you've been on top of the game for 40 years, you're going to think and behave differently than you did when you first started your career. And when you know what your value is to a corporation, you lose sight of that. And so what happened at ITV with Phillip Scofield, I am sure, is not isolated just to ITV. Obviously we know what happened to the Today Show, and it happens in regular businesses anywhere. I am sure that there are people that are doing this in pretty much every business you can imagine. And that's what happens when things go unchecked or people ignore things because people are afraid to maybe lose their jobs. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. I'm going to keep watching it because this is of great interest to me. So thanks again for stopping by, and I look forward to seeing you back. Leave a comment if you're so inclined, and I'll see you soon. Bye.